Protests against immigration raids in Los Angeles have continued for a third day, with authorities declaring the city's downtown precinct an unlawful assembly area. Police officers have used flashbang grenades, rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse crowds, while the president has threatened to send in Marines. Dr. Andrew Selee is president of the Migration Policy Institute in Washington, D.C. He says the situation has quickly got out of control.
I mean, this is a really fast escalation of something that's been building for a while. We have seen a buildup of immigration enforcement. This was Donald Trump's one of his two, top priorities, along with tariffs, in the campaign. And as president, he's made it clear that he wants to deport as many people as possible. But until now, they've really focused on people with criminal records. They have gotten other people. They have been deporting people who are not have criminal records and detaining people who don't. But the majority, according to statistics we've seen, suggests that in the first 3 or 4 months, the majority of people detained did have some sort of criminal record, not always a serious one. This is now they're clearly leaning into workplace raids. They're going after people who are in the economy, who are working, who don't have criminal histories. They're going for large numbers, and they're doing it in a very visible way. And we're seeing a pushback by people in one of the jurisdictions in Los Angeles where there's a lot of sympathy for immigrants, whether they have legal documents or not. And then very quickly this escalated even further when President Trump decided to federalize the National Guard and send them to California. This is highly unusual. It has not happened since 1965. So it tells you how unusual this is. Usually if the National Guard is used, it is in very exceptional circumstances at the request of a governor of a state in coordination with the president. But this was the president doing it without consulting with the governor and sending the National Guard into the streets of Los Angeles. So highly unusual.
Yes, and his rationale for that, the president, was that because there was an insurrection against the U.S., that's what he said. So can you just perhaps talk us through the legalities of what ICE agents and the National Guard are doing?
So ICE agents certainly have the right to go after, if they have probable cause, they have right to enter a workplace with a warrant, and assuming they have a warrant, and go in and try and detain people that don't have documents or inquire who does. So they are in their right to do that. It is a big escalation from what we've seen in the past, but it's certainly not the first time. We've seen workplace raids in other places, but it does seem like a new moment that they're leaning into this. And it's probably not a coincidence that it's California. I mean, I think President Trump wants a confrontation with a big Democratic-leaning state. So it is not a surprise, certainly. And they are able to do that. And people came out and protested because there's a lot of sympathy in Los Angeles. It's a city that is, been built by immigrants, and there's a lot of sympathy with immigrants in general, regardless of their legal status. People protested. There's some evidence that some of the protests got a little bit out of control, but there was also local police on hand who were trying to control it. And then we saw the president make a decision to send the National Guard. Now, that is unusual because generally this is certainly not an insurrection. I mean, this was at best a sort of local civic response to what was happening, the kind of thing that would normally be dealt with by local police. And all evidence suggests that actually the city did send the local police in to respond. But I think President Trump's trying to make a point that this is his top issue. He's going to do it whether or not the state and city governments like it or whether the citizens like it, and he is willing to use as much force as possible.
And from what's been reported so far, around 100 immigrants have been arrested by ICE agents in these raids, at least. What are concerns for these migrants? What are they facing and what's happening to them as we speak?
So they will be, if they have been in the country for less than 2 years, they go into something called expedited removal. And it is a fairly quick process. It still takes several days. It still takes several weeks in some cases. But they have a very cursory inspection by immigration agents and then are deported to their country of origin as soon as there is a plane available. If they have been in the United States more than 2 years, however, they're entitled to a hearing before an immigration judge. And they are allowed to make a case whether they have a petition for asylum or for any other relief that would allow them to stay in the United States. And that process takes a lot longer. They could be in detention for several months while that process takes place, or they may have to, because they generally don't have enough beds to hold everyone that has been detained. They would likely have to let them go, or at least some of them go for a period of time on their own recognizance. There is a process for people. They are allowed to contest whether their deportation. If they've been in the country more than 2 years, they have a much shorter process if they've been in the country less than 2 years. And there have been cases where people who are detained who in fact are legally in the country but just didn't have their documents with them, and they're supposed to be able to present those immediately and be released as well.
Yes, but given what we've seen, though, from the Trump administration, will those, especially the ones that you say have been there for more than 2 years, be afforded due process?
I mean, we have definitely seen that the administration has been willing to act quicker than ever before, and at times without the guardrails that are usually in place for immigrants. So we've seen, people who have been expelled now to El Salvador and to South Sudan, as well as Panama and Costa Rica. So in 4 countries people have been sent to without receiving any due process or being notified ahead of time that they were going to a third country, or being notified a few hours before. These are cases that are winding their way through the courts. There is a lot of reason to believe that the courts will eventually hold that the administration needs to have much more process involved and return to regular order, which is to say allow people, to go to an immigration judge. We've seen several lower courts rule that. We'll see where the Supreme Court comes in on it. Yes, they've certainly been willing to push the process faster than it normally operates and what law and statute dictate.
Yes. Andrew, let's go to the case of Kilmar Abrego Garcia. He has returned to the U.S. after being sent to El Salvador. Do you believe that he will be afforded due process for what are pretty serious charges of human trafficking?
I think he will, because now he's in a criminal court, and their due process really does hold. The immigration law has always had a heavier hand of the executive branch. Which is not to say that people in immigration proceedings don't have rights. They're supposed to have rights. But there's always been, it's a less rigorous process in the criminal courts. He's now in a criminal court. The administration finally responded to a judge's ruling that said that they had to bring him back. They were able to bring him back despite saying that they couldn't. And he's now in criminal proceedings, and it remains to be seen how strong the evidence is. But there he does have many more protections, and look, if he is innocent or the case is incomplete, he will hopefully be freed. If he is guilty, then he will be hopefully, sentenced to be put in jail, but it will be for a fixed period of time in a known location, which is very different than what happened in El Salvador.
Yes, it does look like a bit of a test case. Dr. Andrew Selee, really good to have your thoughts on this. Thank you so much.
Great to be with you.